Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone. We're delighted to have participants from all around the globe on the phone. It is 10 o'clock Central Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Rachel Proper, Communications Rep for Caterpillar Safety Services, and today I'm filling in for Abby Rhodes, our Marketing Manager, while she's out on the road on business this week. So thank you for joining our webinar today that is titled Empower Your Change Drivers, Strategy for Engaging Employees in Safety Culture Improvement. Before we kick off today's presentation, I have just a couple of announcements. The phone lines are muted, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A or chat areas of WebEx to communicate with me. I am under Abby Rhodes' name, but please feel free to communicate with me with any questions that way. We will open up the question and answer time for about the last 10 to 15 minutes. We will keep the phone lines on mute to reduce any feedback, so again, we'll take any questions through WebEx, and I will read those to Brett to answer. Following the webinar, I'll send the presentation slides and recorded version of the webinar to everyone that had registered for this event. And the third and final announcement, which is exciting for all participants today, is that during the presentation, Brett will introduce to you Speak Up, Listen Up, which is a communication training tool that we offer. All of you on the call today will receive a 25% off the purchase of Speak Up, Listen Up if you order from our online shopping cart. So stay tuned for details about how to redeem that offer. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenter, who is Brett Haskins. He's a certified safety professional with more than 18 years of experience working with executives to frontline employees in the steel industry to establish and sustain measurable leading indicator safety management systems. Today he's a senior safety consultant for Caterpillar Safety Services, and he works with Caterpillar facilities and customers all over the world to drive greater productivity through proactive safety management. Brett's a regular presenter at safety industry conferences and is delighted to share with you today practical tools for leading safety through accountability. Brett?
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I will make one apology or one announcement to get started. I am battling a pretty severe cold, so if I get into a coughing spell, I will mute the phone line and be back with you shortly. And I do apologize for that. But, hard to control when cold and the flu season hits you. Thank you for joining again. Let's go ahead and get started, Rachel. Just a quick agenda of what we'll be discussing today. We want to quickly look at an overview of what safety culture looks like. We're going to talk about continuous improvement processes, and that's really where we'll dive into how you engage your employees into the continuous improvement process. And we'll look at a case study, a particular customer of ours, and how they have quickly seen an improvement in their safety culture, and then we'll do some wrap up at the very end. So before we really dive into the cultural models, first understand what culture really is, safety culture. With respect, culture lives in how we do things. It's kind of how you walk, you talk, your beliefs, your ideas. It's really what you do every day without thinking. In a nutshell, I like to say it's what happens in your job, on your job sites when the boss is not around. Next slide. When we look into safety culture models themselves, first thing we want to do is a lot of folks don't understand how culture relates to injuries. So I want to walk down a path. Once we have an incident, when we start investigating incidents, you and your organizations, you begin to look at okay, what are the direct causes, the indirect causes? And we find, statistically speaking, that about 90% of incidents are related to at-risk behavior versus at-risk conditions. And a lot of times we ask ourselves, why do people perform at-risk behaviors? Do they do it because they want to get injured? And obviously the answer is no. No one signs up to get injured. But generally folks will behave in an at-risk way because they have an attitude, a belief, or an idea that something else is more important at the time, or they feel that they're not going to get injured. They have successfully performed an at-risk behavior in the past, and nothing negative resulted of it, maybe even something positive resulted out of it. So those attitudes, beliefs, and ideas are typically driven by the norms, or what we call our unwritten rules in our organizations. And the idea behind cultural improvement is that those norms equal what we really want to happen on a daily basis, and that really defines what your culture is. And when you dive deep into figuring out why incidents occur, you generally find that the culture and the norms is where the root causes of your incidents occur on a repetitive basis. So understanding what your culture looks like and helping to improve those things and engaging your employees in the improvement process really drives performance at the end of the day. Another way we like to look at culture is we call them barriers or safety filters. There's a lot of things that are working on a daily basis. If you'll click the slide, Rachel, a lot of these things we have working on a daily basis. We have human behaviors. We try to teach people to work in a safe manner. We have all the things around safety that we do from a working condition standpoint. We have policies and procedures, all these management systems in place. But all of those things have holes in them. And what we have found in our experience that creates the greatest gaps and the largest holes in all of these filters that we have to keep people from getting injured is that generally it's a safety professional, a group of engineers, or someone from management that is creating these filters or barriers. Very uncommonly do we find that the frontline workers that are doing the work on a daily basis are actually involved and engaged in building the processes, building the things that need to be in place to improve working conditions, engaged in defining what management systems need to look like. And so that creates holes and gaps. Who better to identify what needs to be done than those that are actually performing the work on a daily basis? Next slide. And we've worked for many years with Dr. Dan Peterson, and in Dan's studies and his career, what he found the most successful organizations had 6 things in common. Those that got safety right on a daily basis and managed it correctly had these 6 things as part of their overall safety processes. Top management was visibly committed to safety. They communicated it properly. They were present and showed that safety was just as important as everything else in the organization. Middle management was actively involved in some predefined activities. They're actively involved in holding their subordinates accountable. They're actively involved in showing how important safety is on a daily basis. That supervision is focused on performing things in a quality way to ensure that safety is present in the workplace, not just the absence of accidents. Because we do understand that the absence of accidents does not necessarily equal the presence of safety. Employees are actively participating and engaged in the processes, not just being part of a safety committee. Traditionally, that's where we find employees are engaged in some training. They're part of a safety committee. They may be involved in incident investigations, be involved in doing some inspections. And we'll dive into that continuous improvement process later to show you how we involve them in building those processes. The system is flexible to accommodate your cultures. Within a single facility, you generally find cultures vary between departments. You'll find within large organizations from different locations, cultures will vary. A lot of times that's related to the industry. A lot of times it's related to the geographical area. A lot of times it may be related to whether a facility is a union or a non-union environment. So there needs to be some flexibility built in, and that the safety system is positively perceived by the workforce. What Dr. Peterson found that is if you can do the first 5 very, very well, positive perception takes care of itself. And if you have a positive perception, you're probably already doing some things in the first 5 very, very well. Next slide. And when we'll talk about accountability, and this is really where we want to engage our employees in building what accountabilities look like. And what accountability that we've seen work over the years is, first, accountability has to be defined. The things that people must do, how often they must do them, and how well they must do them, those things have to be defined very, very well. Then we have to train them properly on how to do them, when to do them, and how to do them well. We set up quality measurements to be able to measure whether or not they are done and whether or not they are done well. Those are the measurement systems. And those measurement systems will become your leading indicators. And then when folks do things well, we recognize them for good performance. We find that this accountability process, a lot of times, traditionally speaking, with safety, things don't get very well defined. Training is just training on getting it done. We only measure incidents, and we don't recognize folks when they do things right. We tend to focus on when folks don't do things right, then we definitely will correct those behaviors, which is necessary. But recognition is a huge part of helping improve your culture. Next slide. So support from the top part of an organization is really what helps to drive performance at the bottom of the organization. And that performance at the bottom of the organization is related to defining, training, measuring, and recognizing those accountabilities. Hourly employees should be involved if it's important for top management to be visibly committed to safety, then who should be involved in deciding what visible commitment should look like? If you're trying to influence the perception and the attitudes and beliefs and ideas of your employees on a daily basis through top management visible commitment, then those hourly employees, at least part of them, should be involved in deciding what that commitment looks like, as well as they should be able to decide what it is that their direct supervisor does on a daily basis that helps make safety valuable to them as an employee. Because we all agree that our safety and health systems in our workplaces are intended to benefit our hourly workers the most. So they should be highly engaged and involved in helping decide what those things look like. Next slide, Rachel. Something else we like. Over time, we have saw that really safety performance, we've broken it down into 6 different levels. A lot of organizations we see are at what we call a level 1. They're very reactive in their safety programs, and those tend to yield some pretty high incident rates. Some organizations begin to improve, and they start reacting to what they see. They build observation programs, job safety analysis. They see some improvements in incident rates. And the incident rates aren't to say that your organization is at that level. It's just our experience over the many organizations that we've worked with over the last 25 years. We see them at these levels. At level 3, organizations begin to look at those accountabilities we just talked about, deciding who does what, how well they need to do it, how often they do it, who needs to be involved, and they see some improvement over their incident rates. When organizations use level 4 data to help drive accountabilities, then they even get greater improvements, where they survey the employees to get a perception of what do our employees think, what do our supervisors think about safety processes, what does our management think about our safety. And we always say when you start improvement processes, you need to know where to start. So doing a safety perception survey helps you to diagnose what's wrong before you begin to treat it. At level 5, organizations engage their own people, their hourly workers, their supervisors, their management in building the processes that help drive safety cultural improvement. In level 6, we call leading with passion. You have hourly CEOs at all levels of the organization. Folks believe in safety. It is as important, it is more important than anything else that we do within the organization. And these are the 6 levels, what we call what makes a difference in safety. And you may find your organization at varying levels. As you begin to take the journey along cultural improvement and involving your employees, you'll see yourself move up the scale. So how do you fit all these cultural improvement initiatives and all these philosophical thoughts together? Well, we've built a process we call zero incident performance. And it's really how we suggest and what we have seen work over the years to really engage your employees into that improvement process. First thing we want to do is first engage leadership. Next slide, Rachel. We do that through what we call a leadership roundtable, to where we really help the leadership within an organization to understand what the cultural improvement process looks like. Once we've done that, then leadership itself decides, okay, what do we want to do? How do we want to go along this journey? What we suggest happen is that you do a safety cultural survey, a perception survey every hour employees, or you can do interviews. Some organizations use the perception survey, some use interviews, some use both. We say that the survey is a quantitative measurement of what your perception is. The interviews are a qualitative measurement. You really get down to the brass tacks of what your employees really think about safety within the organization. And once you have that data, of what your journey needs to look like. Next slide, Rachel.
Brett, your volume just went down a little bit. I'm not sure if your phone...
Okay, is it back on?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, I apologize for that. I don't know what happened.
All right.
So a little bit about what the safety perception survey. Some of you may have taken a similar survey before. Some of you may have actually used the Caterpillar safety survey before. But what the survey clarifies for us, it helps to examine the strengths that you can build on as an organization. It helps determine what you need to improve. It also looks at some bones of contention within your organization, looking at what your different levels, your hourly employees versus supervisors versus managers, what they think, how you compare to other organizations, so on and so forth. Next slide. These are the 20 different cultural indicators that are included in the survey. There are a number of questions, 74 questions to be exact, and each question is related to at least one category, one cultural indicator within the survey, and some are related to more than one. And then once you take the survey, then we build reports within our report engine that shows percent positive how folks responded to all the different categories. This is just a sample of that. Next slide. And we also look at results to specific questions in each category. And we look at each question separately. We do composite scores within the report engine that shows how your employees responded to supervisors, and this is just an example of that. And we also look at the gaps between organizations, as you see on the right-hand side. We look at the bottom 10 questions, the worst scoring 10 questions, and then we look at the top 10 questions. We also have an interview process where we can come in and we sit down with groups of hourly workers, supervisors, also sit down with managers one-on-one and talk about, and these are some examples of questions that we might ask interviews. Describe the corrective action process as it relates to safety. All the questions we ask are open-ended. Who are the strongest performing hourly employees with respect to safety and why? And it helps us get away from yes and no answers and really dive into really what's going on within the organization. Helps us be able to analyze what your culture looks like. Once we've either done the safety perception survey or once we've conducted an interviews with employees, then we also will create a report that basically interprets what your safety perception is within your organization. We look at the strengths, and this is just an example as you see on the screen, and we look at the opportunities that you have to improve the overall safety perception within your organization. Next slide. Based off the results of either the interviews or the safety perception survey, from a process standpoint, we suggest the next step would be to create a steering team, and that safety steering team begins to build the plan for how we're going to communicate the results to our employees. All these improvements that we've identified, how do we want to go about improving those? What kind of continuous improvement teams do we want to engage in? Who needs to be a part of the safety steering team? A lot of times what we suggest is you want to have a couple of senior leaders like vice presidents or maybe even your CEO or some managers of the facility. We also suggest that you engage a couple of your hourly workers within that safety steering team, because they're the ones that really say, okay, we believe this is going to work. We understand what goes on a daily basis, and it helps to bridge the gap. And it's also an opportunity to really involve and engage your employees in the improvement process. Next slide, please. Once that safety steering team is developed, they need to be trained on what safety culture looks like. They need to develop a purpose their own charter that says this is what we're going to do over the next year. What we suggest is that the improvement process around safety should look no differently than the improvement process around production or quality or anything else within your organization that's very important. You build a plan, you state what your purpose is going to be, you give the team a scope. This is what you want you to work on. These are the methods you're going to use. If you have to give them resources, if you have to build a budget around the improvement process, define the roles and responsibilities of the team. How are we going to track it? How are we going to measure it? What are your deliverables as a team? What's the schedule, your meeting schedule? Do you need to meet every 2 weeks? Do you need to meet every month, every quarter? How are we going to communicate? What are our milestones for improvements? How are we going to celebrate our improvement process? And employees should be engaged in deciding what this charter looks like. Next slide, please. Once we have built the plan, the next step is to develop the improvements. We want to develop our leadership themselves. We want to develop the CI teams. We want to develop and train our frontline employees. We engage them in that process. We want to develop and facilitate the steering team. We have a process that we use to do that. Next slide, please, Rachel. And we call it a rapid improvement workshop. If you guys are familiar with the term Kaizen, it follows along the same lines, but at Caterpillar we use RIW as the acronym. And we build a team of 7 to 9 hourly workers to work on a specific improvement process, whether that process is improving safety meetings, improving your investigation process, improving inspections, improving toolbox safety talks. Whatever the topic is chosen by the steering team, then you engage a group of hourly workers in helping to identify what those improvements are. During this week of running a rapid improvement workshop, the first day we'll spend training the CI team and what safety culture looks like. We train them on the 6 criteria. We train them on define, train, measure, and recognize in the accountability model. Then we also tell and show them how we do things well. We've talked about what effective facilitation is, effective leadership, effective closure of the situation. And after we go through those 3 days of organizing and building these improvements, then we'll also have that team report out to the steering team and management the improvements that they have developed over the last 3 days. Next slide. Generally, it's 3 to 5 day projects. We also start out the CI team with developing a purpose statement. POP stands for purpose, outcome, and process, and we'll talk about that. We use action item matrix to track all of the things that they identify that need to be done. We identify what management needs to be trained in, supervisors, and what employees need to be trained in. We really focus on error-proofing 1 to 3 processes over a year's time. Organizations can only handle so much change, and we understand that, and I know that you guys do also. So we have to start small, and we work our way through the process. Success breeds success, and we just continuously repeat it over time. Next slide. Some of the tools that we use for CI teams, as I mentioned, POP statement. Once a process is identified by the steering team that needs to be improved, then we ask the guys or gals that are in the CI team, okay, what's wrong with your current safety meetings as an example? And they're going to identify what's wrong. So that complaint becomes a go. If they're boring, if they're not fun, if the information doesn't pertain to what we're doing during that workday, then we need to fix that before the end of the week. And so we use a process we call complaint equals goal. For more complex situations, we use cause and effect diagrams, 5 lines, affinity diagrams. We may use Pareto voting to decide on things and improvements that we need to make. The idea is that we use simple tools that your hourly workers can use, can understand, and can really implement. Next slide. Purpose outcome process, that is the tool that we use to develop kind of gives us kind of a guiding statement. We will work with the team during the very beginning of that rapid improvement workshop to say, this is what we're going to focus on. As you guys can well understand, you get a group of folks together, and we can't solve world hunger in a week. So there's a lot of things that need to be improved. So this purpose statement identifies what we're going to improve during that week and keeps us focused during the week. Next. We also use an action item matrix to track the items that we're going to work on. This is just an example. Next slide, Rachel. And we have fault tree analysis for the 20 safety culture indicators in our safety perception survey. We have fault tree analysis that has been developed over time by Dr. Peterson that kind of shows where things go wrong within each of those safety culture indicators. If the topic is related to recognition or inspections or hazard correction, one of the safety culture indicators from the safety perception survey, then we can also use these fault tree analysis to help identify improvements within your own systems. An example of a cause and effect diagram that we also might use during the rapid improvement workshops. And this is in a real life example of one of our customers. We ran a continuous improvement team on mentoring of new employees. And this is really the end product of what was developed during the week, along with many other things. This is just part of it. But these are the activities, AKA accountabilities, that these hourly workers came up with during the week that said, this is what will make our mentoring process work. Now, I'm not going to go through each of these separately, but to give you an idea of the work that these teams can put together, their district manager, they said on a similar frequency as production, we need our district manager to ask at least 2 open-ended questions about how the mentoring process is going. At this particular facility, their district manager was not there all the time, so he was about once a quarter, he was on site. And they said when he's here, we want him to ask about the mentoring process to show visible commitment. We want our plant manager to be engaged in the mentoring process to show his visible commitment. HR needs to be make contacts with the supervisors and leads when new employees or when new employee orientation is completed. Our supervisors have certain activities that they're going to be engaged in. Employee leads, their lead foreman, the mentors, and the employees themselves. There are certain defined things that people need to be doing. And if you look through each of these, you'll see that they are connected at each level. So true accountability that works, and this is what we help those rapid improvement workshops. We help the hourly workers understand, as you build accountabilities, they have to be connected at each level. If you have a plant manager that's performing an activity around mentoring, well, his activity needs to be connected to the folks that directly report to him or her. And then those managers, their activities need to be directly connected to the supervisor, so on and so forth down the line. And if you lose that connection, then you end up losing true accountability. So during the week, these rapid improvement workshops, the teams will build these activities. We talk about what quality looks like, and we talk about the frequency that they need to be done. Next slide. Some examples that we have teams that work on: supervisor development, training, incident investigation, worksite inspections. A common solution for rapid improvement teams is toolbox safety meeting. We see a lot of organizations that don't do those very well, or their employees don't like them. So it's something that it's an easy win-win to start out with. You get your employees engaged, you implement their improvements, and you start seeing some positive impact on your organization. Next slide. Which ones do we tackle? Which ones do we avoid? Well, again, we don't want to solve world hunger. So a lot of times you may volunteer which tasks we're going to work on. We use Pareto voting a lot of times. a simple concept called diverge converge that we'll decide, okay, what's the very first improvement initiative. But we really want to focus on those things that give us high impact and aren't going to cost us a lot. Where we can truly engage our workers, not only in building the improvements, but that the entire workforce can see and witness the improvements being implemented, such as near-miss reporting and resolution, toolbox safety meetings, safety training. Those are some very simple things that you can go to improvement initiative on to start the process. As we said earlier, change is difficult regardless of what you're trying to change. So we suggest that you don't do too many teams to start. We suggest probably 2 to 3 teams a year in very advanced cultures, in very advanced organizations that are used to change. You can maybe do more, but we'll run those 3 to 5 day teams, and we build those around effective leadership facilitation. And we want to have effective closure of the things that they commit to. If they're going to build improvements around safety, then we need to make sure that they work. Next slide. So that's really the development phase of the zero incident performance process. And that's really how we see engagement of employees, not just participating in the process, but what we call authentic involvement in building the improvement of your safety processes. If they own them, they will make sure they work. If they're engaged in deciding what it looks like, they will make sure they work. When things need to be changed and updated, they will be the first to step up to the plate and say, okay, this is not working anymore. We built it, we own it, so let's ensure that it does work. Once they build those improvements, then the next step is to implement the improvements. And what we have seen work over time is that we would pilot the improvements. We'll use the example of toolbox safety meetings that we used earlier. You may pick out a couple of places within your organization, a couple of key supervisors, key departments that you want to implement the new style toolbox safety meeting. Once you pilot those improvements, generally you get feedback from those groups or departments, and you may make additional changes with the CI team, and then you're ready to roll it out to the entire organization. Next. Also part of the process is checking results to evaluate how well we're advancing, how well we're improving. We want to evaluate our progress within the strategic plan. Additionally, we want to evaluate how we're measured against the improvements that we just implemented per topic. So if we use the example of a safety meeting again, or a toolbox safety meeting, part of what that CI team would do during the week is to develop how will we measure the success of what we were tasked to build, improve safety meetings. So we'll do quality measurements. They'll build some leading indicators on how we will measure the process and the process's success. And how do we recognize folks that are doing it successfully? Next slide. As we mentioned earlier, you can't start large. We start small. We may teach one man how to fish, per se, and let that allow us to help build our culture and grow our culture over time. Generally, we see the process take 3 to 5 years to really see good, positive improvement in your safety culture, to really get your employees to understand and believe that this is not going away. Cultures are built over time. You can't talk yourself out of something you behaved yourself into. And so an organization that has behaved for a certain way over time, and safety has kind of been a bolt-on, and it's not really as valued within the organization as some other important initiatives such as production and quality. It takes a while to change the beliefs and attitudes and ideas of your employees, but you have to start somewhere. You start small, and once you become successful, then you can just set that success breeds success over time. An example of an improvement, this is an actual example, next slide please, Rachel, of an organization we've been working with. And this is just 2 years of safety perception survey. They decided decided they wanted to do the perception survey every year. And you can see just after running 3 continuous improvement teams in 1 year, they saw about a 4% out of a scale of 100, about a 4% cultural perception improvement from one survey to the next. I don't have their 2012 results, but you can see the percentage-wise, 5.4%, which is a pretty drastic improvement in culture just in 1 year. And the idea is when you really do it and you do it well, you're going to see benefits, and you're going to see true engagement from your hourly workers. They want to work safely. They want management to be visibly committed. They want their supervisors to be involved and engaged on a daily basis and focus on what's important, not just focus on whether or not an incident occurs. And over time, you'll see this gradual improvement change. Next. So begin with the end in mind. We kind of ask the question, what's the difference in an approach if I want to improve productivity, or I want to improve quality or customer service, or I want to improve safety? And really the answer is there is no difference. If you manage safety and manage safety improvements like you manage other things within your organization, you will get the same or similar results. Next. And as we discussed, the idea is we focus on upstream activities because they will yield the downstream results that we all, that are near and dear to every one of us. No recordables, no lost times, no fatalities. But we can't just sit back and wait for these things to happen. We have to make sure that safety is present in the workplace. And we want to build our activities and our expectations around things that we can control. Dr. Peterson says we don't measure production by units not produced. Why would we measure safety by counting accidents? So we measure our success based on the things that we do and control on a daily basis, and those are our accountabilities. Next. Error-proof your processes, 1 to 3 processes. If you were to the gear model, the barrier filter, all things that we have put in place over the years have gaps and holes. If we engage our hourly workers, they help us fill those voids and gaps that are in those systems. We hold people accountable for their activities. We develop total personnel involvement at all levels of our organization in the continuous improvement. Employees are engaged and participate in building it. Management, supervision, executives are engaged in implementing it, overseeing it, ensuring that it works. And perfect practice makes perfect performance, and that's the idea. Next. Just a graphical representation. If we look at the gray line, the results, as we begin to engage people on the x-axis from senior, vice president, all the way down to the worker, as you begin to engage people in building the activities, the red line, you'll see the results will come. As we increase involvement, as we increase participation, as we increase employee engagement, our change drivers, as we get them involved, we will see the results over time that we want. And we'll see our management systems improve. We'll see our compliance improve, our effectiveness in the organization improve overall. Next. Involve leaders from all levels. Let's relentlessly pursue foundational safety processes. The idea is we don't get rid of level 1 and level 2 processes. We use effective data-driven safety teams to involve our hourly workers based off of what they perceive to build accountabilities, which is a level 3 activity, in our level 1 and level 2 processes. And that's really what drives the performance overall. Next. Perfect the fundamentals in the plays, like building a winning team, develop the skills needed, engage all team members in the process, and focus on excellence every day in all that you do. A couple of testimonials from customers that we have worked with on their results. of engaging their change drivers in the process. Few companies have the resources to help us leverage the internal involvement and make the safety cultural message resonate within our organization. So you can see they really understood involvement of their employees. Next. Ken Fowler from Dakota Electric. Since implementing the ZIP process, we've documented more than 1,300 employee supervisor safety engagement moments, which has involved employees in building. Next. And Dave Watts from Atkinson Construction. Establish an accountability system works, and it will continue to work because it addresses safety as an integral part of our company culture and productivity. Next. And Bill Schneider, President and CEO of Knife River. We've surpassed our goals every year since 2006. For the first time in our 75-year history, we worked a full quarter without a single lost time incident, which was a huge milestone for them. Next. So with what we've talked about today, a lot of you may be asking, so what do we do? What are our next steps? What we would suggest that you do is perform some type of survey, whether that's an interview survey, whether it's utilizing Caterpillar Safety Perception Survey, but perform something that's valid to understand how your employees perceive safety within your organization. Once you have a survey, develop a steering team that's going to take the data from the survey and is going to build a plan. And then once the plan is built, you need to develop those improvements by engaging your workers. Now, every improvement that needs to be done within safety of your organization doesn't take a 3 to 5 day continuous improvement team. There are some things that you can solve within an hour, build improvements within a couple of hours by just talking and engaging in a conversation with hourly workers. The idea is that they are engaged in designing it and building it and implementing it because they own it and they will make sure that it works. As you develop your improvements, you build those improvements, you implement the improvements, you build your processes, you build your leadership, and you train everyone within your organization. And as you continue to improve, you continuously increase participation and engagement at every level of your organization. Next. And that's our discussion for the day. As Rachel mentioned earlier, we do have a 25% discount offered on Speak Up, Listen Up combination pack. You can use this coupon code if you're doing the online checkout from safety.cat.com. And I will turn it back over to Rachel.
Okay, before I start reading the questions, because we have had a few come through, just to reiterate here what Brett said about the coupon code, you just have to simply enter SULU25 when checking out through our online shopping cart. You can get to it through safety.cat.com and click on the shopping tab. That will take you to our shopping cart, or you could directly type in shopcatsafety.com. That's the actual web address for that. So please feel free to use that and get 25% off. I am going to go ahead and go to the questions. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat within WebEx. We had one come through from someone who's an organization that's a service provider, resident contractor at a wide variety of locations. Brett. She was wondering, does the engagement process, a rapid improvement workshop, fit for organizations that are geographically dispersed, where each site has different management teams and there's virtually no interaction with one another?
Okay. What we have found that works for where geography is a challenge within organizations, such as like construction companies, is you can build those improvements. The rapid improvement workshops do work at the local level. And over time, you may run one rapid improvement workshop at one local facility, and completely across the country, you may run another one. But once you begin to engage your employees and they begin to build the improvements, you, I guess, more rapidly implement those improvements throughout your organization. It doesn't mean that if you ran one in, say, Florida and one in Oregon, that the improvements that the team in Florida built are going to necessarily work at the one in Oregon, but you have a starting point. And maybe a 3 to 5 day workshop may only last for 1 or 2 days because employees understand, okay, our peers built this system in Florida. Now we want to take what they built and we want to maybe change it. That's where the flexibility comes in. We may want to flex it a little bit and make some additional improvements or changes for our part of the organization. But you can more rapidly do that as you begin to develop those teams and develop those improvements at different locations. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, let us know and we'll go at it again.
Another question came through. This is a good one. You had just mentioned a good place to start in one of the last slides here was with a perception survey. However, earlier on in our ZIP process, we talk about starting with engagement of leadership and then going to assessment. So can you explain a little bit about that, Brett?
Yeah, our process is defined by, generally it's leadership that first says that, okay, we need to improve safety. Our culture around safety needs to be improved. And that's one of the first steps in our process, shows that we engage the leadership because they generally will say, we need to improve, now let's reach out to someone to help us with that improvement. We'll come in and sit down with the leadership to help them understand where is the good starting point. So engaging the leadership to the leadership roundtable is kind of that first discussion with leaders to say, okay, this is where you need to begin. However, we do see a lot of organizations that reach out to us. A lot of our customers, they will reach out to us first and say, we want to use your safety perception survey. Once they have conducted the survey, then we go in and sit down with the leadership and talk about what safety culture looks like, and we also kind of discuss what the results of their survey was. So the true starting point is for improvements is to do the survey. Now we diagnose the problem, now we know where to start. But you also have to engage the leadership in the process.
Okay, another person has a question asking if we have a program similar to DuPont's Phelps leadership program that's based on the Bradley curve.
At this point in time, we do not. We do not have that type of program. We're continuously working to make improvements to our offerings and our tools and processes. And so we always welcome customer feedback on things that they would like to see us engage in and be able to offer.
Any other questions online? Brett, do you want to speak a little bit to what Speak Up and Listen Up, what that training program actually entails? Someone was asking if the survey and interview information is included in that, which it's not. So if you want to describe a little bit about Speak Up and Listen Up, that might be helpful.
Yeah, it's Speak Up and Listen Up. It's really a training coaching for supervisors and even your hourly workers. Part of the improvement process, we talk about recognition a lot, but additionally, we also have to address things when they're done wrong. So Speak Up and Listen Up is kind of a combination tool that when we see things that are being done wrong, we speak up. When we see things that are being done right, we speak up. Additionally, when somebody identifies something being done or something wrong or right, then we also have to listen up. So it's kind of a two-way. We need to speak when we see things, and when we see it, we need to say it. But also there has to be a receipt of the information by whoever's listening. So it's a combination tool to train multiple levels within your organization to help improve safety conversations and safety engagements within your organization.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I don't have any others coming through right now, so thank you all so much for attending. Brett, thank you for presenting. We will be sending out a follow-up email that will be going out to all participants that will include a recorded version of the webinar and the presentation, so stay tuned for that. And thank you all again. Please feel free to use our coupon code to get 25% off the product. Thanks for attending.
Thank you. You still there, Rachel?